Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. The Qmulos Next Generation Enterprise Compliance, specifically for our state and local in education market. My name is Matt Hopke. I'm the director of our sales. Alongside me, I've got Sean Whipke, who is our senior solutions engineer / sales engineer. And we also are grateful to have Solutions Simplified and Carousel both help sponsor this session. And we will hear from them in a second. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to John Houghton from Carousel so he can give you a little background about Carousel.
Hi, everyone. First, we want to thank you for taking the time to learn with us today. If you're not familiar, Carousel Technology Corporation is a trusted government IT solutions provider that combines product expertise with a thorough understanding of the government procurement process to help public sector customers select and implement the best solution to fit their needs. We hold a number of contracts and support a large ecosystem of partners to help get you the right solution in the time frame that helps move your initiatives forward.
Thank you, John. And Carousel is a partner / distributor. They're our main government distribution channel. And then we have Rachel Duvall from Solutions Simplified. Rachel?
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. I guess now it's afternoon. So hello, everyone. This is Rachel Duvall, and I'm the president of Solutions Simplified. We're a value-added reseller. We're located in Sacramento, but we serve state and local governments all over the United States. And one of our missions as a company is to vet out new technology solutions and choose the ones that are going to bring the most value to our customer base. And we really take pride in working with the best in breed solutions. And that's why we're so excited to partner with Qmulos. So anyone out there who's been struggling with inefficient manual processes when it comes to their compliance data is going to be really impressed with what they hear today. So thank you for having us, and I hope you enjoy the webinar.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. And so as a quick agenda, we're going to go over just some background, slide deck of really how we came out as a company. And then we're going to turn it over to Sean Whipke, who is going to really dive into the demo to show you firsthand our applications. So first, we're going to talk about a little bit of feedback from NIST. I actually have two quotes that are from different states around using the NIST frameworks. You can see here from the state of Illinois how important it was for them to use the NIST cybersecurity framework, right, and really helping them enhance their risk posture. Second one is from the president and the CIO of state of Connecticut, right, where he's talking about utilizing the different frameworks to properly identify the security risks and adopt the different measures that are out there to really, again, increase that security posture. And you'll see as we go through this presentation and the demonstration, how we can handle not only 853, but all the subcomponents of 853, a lot of the different frameworks that are out there. So a little bit about Qmulos. So we were founded in 2012 by our CEO, Matt Coos. He was actually a Department of Homeland Security executive for the longest time. And he was really one of the thought leaders from the continuous diagnostics and mitigation program. So if you're familiar with that, you understand that it's a very large program for the civilian agencies. But coming out of that, he saw that Splunk was that major big data platform. And being a compliance guru himself, he understood that a lot of the processes that you take are very manual. So he built Qmulos trying to get out of that manual process and really get into that automation. We've got a really rock star group behind us, from our development team to our consultants to our customer success team, our support team, et cetera. We do hold a TS facility clearance, so if there's any work that's needed from that standpoint, we can cover you there. All of our consultants are cleared to one degree or another, and we are located inside of Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. So we are Splunk partners through and through. We do not sit on any other type of log aggregation or big data platform like your Elk Stack, Logarithm, et cetera. The two solutions that we have, the flagship solution that we have is Q Compliance. And when you go back to some of those different blurbs from the state governments, so we built Q compliance really around the risk management framework, right? Mapping that to NIST 853. There's a lot of different components that fall underneath 853, so we can really grasp every part of those frameworks that you might have in your organization. We also can do custom controls. For example, if you have something that's not standardized by 853 or NIST, we have that ability to build that and map those controls within Q compliance. Q Audit, that's a really focused application. It's around the Intelligence Community Standard 500-27, right? ICS built, our intelligence community built that standard, but a lot of other folks adhere to it. It's really built around your insider threat program. So if you have any type of insider threat program, we really took 500-27 as that gold standard and built Q Audit around that. And you'll see that a little bit in the demo. Again, as I mentioned, we are premium applications built only for the Splunk platform. It's very important that you're utilizing that real-time data to get really how your security posture is working within your organization. And really our goal is to help enable that massive ability to scale while automating those different security and compliance activities that we see on a day-to-day basis. Again, it's very manual. We've got customers across the wide range of spectrum from small, medium, large. Matt, again, our CEO, was from DHS, so we've got a very strong presence in the civilian DoD IC space. So it's very proven there. So it can definitely work within the state and local market. And really, our mantra is focusing on that compliance automation to deliver the operational security. So you can see some awards that we've won here. We've actually won a couple in the last year, 2020, that we're really proud of. So what is it that we do? So again, since we're sitting on top of that big data platform, Splunk, we're allowing our customers to collect once and report many. So you're not having to go to your Splunk admin. You're not having to go to any admin and say, I'm going to need a data call of all these systems or all of these different solutions to see if my systems are compliant, which is it's actually a new paradigm when you're talking about the GRC or the IRM space. And again, what we're trying to do is we're enabling those customers to really achieve that operational security goals by meeting those compliance requirements. As we mentioned earlier, we have a ton of different frameworks out of the box, whether you're focused on HIPAA, whether you're focused on FedRAMP. Again, we're mapped directly to 853. We've got 800-171. If any of the state and local entities out there are doing business with the Department of Defense, that you have to be CMMC certified. So we actually have a CMMC framework built into Q compliance from level 1 through 5. So what that shows you is we're very flexible at whatever your organizational needs are from a compliance standpoint. So there's really a 4-step process on how we do it. Really, the first is getting your data into Splunk. I think we all know that, and we can agree that good data in is going to result in good results out, right? So making sure that your data is SIM compliant, and from the Splunk perspective, that's the common information model. So adding all the appropriate technical add-ons. Step 2 is what we do is we take that one step further and apply what we call our QSIM tags, right? So we have our own TAs that we're going to form them into the compliance information model. So whether it's your OS, whether it's your network devices, so your firewall, your router, your switches, whether it's your vuln scanners from Tenable, Nessus, Rapid7, we will tag that data. And then what we do is we use our pre-built analytics based off of that tag data, and we're going to provide you with real-time information on those specific controls. So we can automate your assessments. We can automate the passing and failing of your controls. We can send you emails. We can send something to a help desk ticket, etc. And then finally, you're going to be able to leverage our Q visuals, right? So we've got 400 plus. It's probably more now out of the box visualizations that you're going to be able to utilize in all the way down to the control level. So you do not need to know how to write Splunk queries. We've done all that heavy lifting for you, and you'll see it when we get into the demonstration, how granular you can get in digging in, but it's definitely something that saves time, and you don't have to be an expert with it. In regards to the architecture, so we actually, we sit on our own search head or search head cluster. And this is really meant to show you the time to value. So when you're thinking about your kind of legacy governance, risk, and compliance tools, they're all comprised of underlying infrastructure, relational databases, where you're housing the evidence. Since we don't rely on that, we're very quick to get stood up. And you can see here, so they both can sit on the same search head or search head cluster. They share the same data models. You can see the different data sources down here, whether it's your firewall switches, your OS logs, right? We send it through the appropriate data models, going back to that 4-step system that I just talked about, run our analytics, and then show you the visualizations. Qaudit, again, that's that more focused app, around 500-27, but it's the same principle, right? You've got your data sources, you're feeding them through the appropriate data models, running the analytics, and then showing the visualizations. Really, the benefits that we found a lot of our customers for using our applications, again, I think the top one is reducing that manual effort and paperwork. It could take days, it could take weeks for somebody to do a data call to figure out if the system is compliant. You've got to scroll through all the logs just to, it can be a very arduous process. It's going to increase your frequency of monitoring, your overall technical security, and it's going to give you true risk insight into really how your organization and how your systems are doing. If you have a changing infrastructure, for example, if you decided that you wanted to change out firewall vendors, we can change just as easily as your organization can by just simply adding those technical add-ons, ingesting it into Splunk, and then we're going to be able to map those to controls. It's going to improve your ROI on Splunk. Splunk is a very, very powerful tool when you're talking about consuming all that data, but from a compliance standpoint, that's really what we shine, and that's a rock solid hard use case when you're talking about, well, we're not getting the most investment out of our Splunk. All of our customers that we have are immediately seeing that ROI on that investment that they've made. And really, it's enabling CIOs, everybody really across the organization to align. We've got a lot of different dashboards for different views. We actually use the RBAC, the role-based access control that Splunk uses. So anybody that has permission to view that, you can
left the meeting,
et cetera. And really, the sky's the limit when you're talking about what we can do. So any enterprise, whether you're small, medium, or large, if you want to start off small and then grow to any type of continuous monitoring phase, we can do that. We are vetted for the Splunk Cloud. You can run it on AWS, Azure. You can run it in a hybrid. Again, any framework that you might have, any controls, whether it's standard controls or custom controls, we can help make sense of that. Really, in any data that you have, as long as you're ingesting the Splunk, we're going to help you make sense of that and really, secure your posture from a compliance standpoint. Again, I mentioned that Q Compliance was really built around the risk management framework. So here are the 6 steps: categorize your system, select your controls, implement your controls, assess your controls, authorize your systems, and then monitor your controls. So we took that approach. Step 1, again, categorizing your system. It's not going to, one size isn't going to fit all organization. You're probably going to have different requirements within your organization. Step 2 is where you're going to select your controls. So this is where you're going to apply the different baselines, the different overlays. So whether you use a NIST baseline, you can do that here. If you've got custom controls, you're going to tailor them in and out. So that's obviously a good idea. And really, making sure that your boundaries and everything are set up correctly. Step 3, again, this goes back to that part where you're making sure that your data is getting into Splunk, right? So 1, 2, and 3 is really kind of the point where we start taking over on 4, 5, and 6, but this is making sure that your TAs are there. This is where we'll implement our TAs. And then 4, 5, and 6, as I mentioned, is really where we start getting into the nitty-gritty here. So step 4 is really achieving that ongoing assessment. So with Q Compliance, you can review all of your evidence in one place. One of the things that we have found working with a lot of our customers is that they really rely on that technical evidence, and that is the toughest evidence to collect. Since we're sitting on top of Splunk, we can get that in as real time as it gets, as you're getting those data feeds in. We can also do human activity. So some of your policy and procedure controls, right? You can go in there and manually enter, I have monitored this controls. And then finally, you can also store different evidentiary documents. You can link it to a SharePoint site if you keep files there, et cetera. So really, we can do everything that a legacy GRC tool can do, plus capturing that technical evidence, which is the toughest part. Step 5, when you're talking about achieving that ongoing authorization, we actually have a really slick dashboard based off of your assessment scores. We can help automate your ATOs. So for example, if your adjusted assessment score rises, as you can see here, above a 60%, we can go ahead and authorize a interim authorization. So we can automatically do that. If it drops below a 60%, we can rescind that authorization. So we found that customers are utilizing this to make sure that, one, the systems are authorized, and 2, they can get up and running very, very quickly. We can also integrate with different, legacy GRC tools out there, like EMAS. We've worked a lot with the DoD there, TELUS Exacta, RSA Archer, and again, it's something that our customers have really, really grown to love. And step 6 is that really holistic continuous monitoring. So this is that nirvana phase. This is where your most important technical controls will rely on this dashboard. And so you can see here, ACO2 is failing, IAO2 is passing, SIO02, that hasn't been reviewed. But not only that, you can dive into these. So if I was to click on ACO2, because it's red, it's failing, you'll bring up all the pertinent information below on why that's failing. That way you can have real-time action to take, whether it's to your your admin team, whether it's something that you might want to report to your security operations center, et cetera. But we give you a really great visualization for continuous monitoring. So that wraps it up around Q Compliance. Q Audit, again, was built off of that ICS standard 500-27. So that is really the gold standard for auditing. And in that audit policy, it really breaks down the different auditable events that you really want to adhere to. And really, again, think of it from an insider threat standpoint. So if you've got somebody that's trying to write to external devices, right, you might want to go ahead and capture that, and you can dig into those users who are abusing things. If there's somebody that's trying to print to a device, or maybe they're in outside office hours, they're printing a lot of documents they shouldn't, that's something that you might want to investigate. And again, here's some of the audible events. We have a great dashboard. Sean will get into that a little bit more, but it's really ensuring that your audit sources are really online and available. We've got a bunch of different families. We've got 8 different families that you can really dig into. And it's what I think is monitoring those most critical sensitive network activities that you have. So I will send this out as well. This slide deck will be provided. I know we are recording it, but I want to also go over some of our services before we get into the demonstration. As I mentioned before, we do have a great customer success management team where they help manage the project lifecycle from deployment to really ending it. We're always giving, updates on how the deployment went. So they are really a rock solid group that work hand in hand with our customers to really, adopt and get those different roadmap items that they need to. We often update our solution with, feedback from our customers. So we really like that. From a deployment engineering, we just have a rock solid group. They're all certified in Splunk. So they know Splunk. They're all certified in Qmulos. So really being able to troubleshoot anything from the Splunk environment, get everything on board from a Qmulos perspective, map to those controls. etc. And then we also have a training group where we actually train our end users, whether it's an ISO and ISM, on how to utilize Q Compliance and Q Audit. We also have something for admins where, you know, we show them how to maintain it, how to update it, map to controls, build custom libraries, etc. So really making sure that they're becoming that subject matter expert. With that, I will turn it over to Sean Whipkey, who will now go through the demonstration so you can see it. Sean, over to you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Whipkey. I'm a senior sales engineer with Qmulos. I'll be demonstrating the two apps today, Q Compliance and Q Audit. As Matt mentioned, these are premium Splunk apps. You can find them listed on Splunkbase, but you can't get them there. You do have to come to us or one of our partners in order to get these apps. As he mentioned, we do like to run on a separate search head or search head cluster from any other apps that you're running, especially enterprise security. That's just to make sure there's no knowledge object contention or any problems with saved searches interfering with each other, taking up all the resources, anything like that. We do most of our tagging at search time, so it's important that we have as much power as possible for our searches whenever they're running. What I'm going to do is start with Q Compliance. We're going to start at a very high level, and then we're going to dig down into a single system and then into a single control. From there, we'll see how we can automate based off the technical evidence for the control. And then we'll go back up to the system level. We'll look at some of the pages that we can do at the system level, and we'll finish off by looking a little bit at the configuration of Q Compliance and how we can do a health check on our data for the Q Compliance visualizations. After that, we'll get into Q Audit. That'll be much faster. It should only take a few minutes because it's a very focused app. It's all about that ICS 500-27 list of auditable events. So after we take a look at that, that'll be our two apps, and then we'll be able to take any questions that you have through the chat window. So I'm going to start at an organization overview level. Inside of Q Compliance, we set up organizations, and these can have as many levels as you need. They can have a number of sub-organizations. As you can see here, I have 3 sub-organizations for the organization that I'm in now. You can make this as complicated as you need in order to model it after your own office, your own department, whatever level you're installing Q Compliance at. Here we're looking at the organization as a whole, all the sub-organizations, all the systems that are applied to it. We can apply systems at every level of the organization. Systems are collections of assets, and you define which assets belong in which system. Assets can belong in more than one system. You might be part of a specific system because it's a FedRAMP, it's a cloud environment. It might be part of another system because it's an email server. But the system level is the level that we apply the controls against, and that's where we're going to do most of our work. But I'm looking at the organization as a whole. I'm seeing how many controls have been applied to all the systems that are part of my organization, how many I've reviewed of those controls, what the passing percentage of those controls are, what's the passing percentage overall of all the controls that we've applied to our system. I can see the historic trends on there, and then I can see the scores broken down by sub-organization. I can see by percentage, by count, and by control category. And for any of these visualizations, if I want more information on it, I just have to click on the visualization. That's an important thing to remember when you're looking at both Q Compliance and Q Audit, is the fact that you don't need to know Splunk in order to be able to use it. We've written all the searches for you. So you can just usually click on the visualization and it'll provide more detail, more information, or you can open it up in a toolbar and you can see the search that powers that visualization. If you do know Splunk, you can customize everything that you can see here. You can customize all the dashboards. You can customize all the visualizations. You can do that to your heart's content. So here we're looking at the 6 systems that are part of my global organization. So they're in various levels of passing and failing or not reviewed. Again, I'm seeing basically the same panels as I saw on the previous page, except at the system level. And if I want more information, I can just click on the system to dive into it and take a look at all the different families of controls. What you're going to see here is the fact that I have multiple control libraries applied to this system. I have NIST 853 Rev 4 controls. That's the one that we were originally built around. I have CMMC controls. That's one that we added last year in order to maintain compliance with CMMC regulations. I have custom controls, which might come from a different mandate that doesn't fall under one of the other ones that we have. I can also have the CDM controls out of the box, as well as NIST 853 Rev 5. We added Rev 5 in one of our recent releases as a separate control library So if you're migrating from Rev 4 to Rev 5, you can run both sets of controls at the same time. They won't interfere with each other. Similarly, in terms of interference, we do track both the assessment and the audit scores for our controls. These scores don't affect each other. Assessments are typically considered to be an internal review where you're looking at your own system and how it's doing. An audit is typically from an external agency that comes in and take a look. We track both of those scores, we keep them separate, and we can change the scoring that we're looking at just by clicking on the radio button and switching that on pretty much any of these pages. So I'm going to dive down into one of my control families, the AC family, which is access control. This is going to show me both the audit and assessment scores for the different controls and control enhancements that are part of the AC family. So here I can get a quick view to see which ones are passing and which ones are failing. We have a color code of green and red. And since I see AC2 is failing on both audit and assessment status, I'm going to click on that to dive in and get a little bit more information. This takes us to what we call the Control Compliance Hub. This is what I consider the nuts and bolts of Q compliance, because this is where we're taking care of the different types of evidence for the control, where we're looking at the audit and assessment status, where we're seeing how we can automate the control based off the technical evidence, how we can track the different documents and artifacts that are part of it, how we can even track things such as control records, plans of actions and milestones, test procedures, and implementation statements. So at the top of the page here, I'm going to see my controls and control enhancements for AC2. I see that most of my control enhancements are passing. My AC2 control is in purple because it's a hybrid control. We have the different controls can be inherited. They can be hybrid controls. They can be tailored. They can be overlay based. We can do a number of different things with the controls in order to map it to your organization. But I'm seeing my audit and assessment status has failed here. If I click on one of these, it's going to bring up the details. It's going to show me my audit finding. It's going to show me my status. It's going to show me who audited me and when that audit occurred. I have a time-stamped record of every audit and every assessment that's occurred since I installed Q Compliance. As Matt mentioned, we use role-based access control as Splunk. We actually expand on Splunk's RBAC in order to provide additional roles, so you only have the ability to do what you need to be able to do for your job. So in this case, I have the role of auditor, so I could set a new audit finding and set a new audit status here. If I wanted to, I could add a new audit finding and I can submit it, and it's going to give me a time-stamped record that I have updated the audit status and who did it and when that audit status occurred. I can also view the details of the control. So all the pertinent details, including organizationally defined parameters. I can view that. I can view the supplemental guidance, and I can view the related controls. I can do that for both audit and assessment status. I can see how that's going, and I can take care of the audit and assessment status manually if I have that role of auditor or assessor. But we can do it automatically as well. So if I scroll down here, I'm going to see my technical evidence. This is the evidence that we're pulling from Splunk. AC2 is account management, so we're looking for account management indicators. We're looking at account management over time, top account managers by action, top actions by account type. We're seeing all this information in these visualizations right here. We're also seeing security scan statistics. So if you have a security scan running, you can import that information in, and we can open it up in our SCAP dashboard, which will show us the results of the benchmark rule results, which shows the passing and failing results. And then I can click on one of these to see the details of the rule and any affected assets for it. But with this technical evidence, I can not only take it and use it to manually audit or assess my control, but I can automate that as well. So for example, if I have a policy that says that no account should be deleted, accounts should only be disabled. Well, I'm seeing right here that I have 155 accounts deleted. So obviously I am not in compliance with my own policy. So I can open this up in a search. As I mentioned, you just need to click on the toolbar in order to get more information. So I'm going to see how many accounts have been deleted every day. I can see the raw evidence behind it. And I'm going to save it as an alert. If you're familiar with Splunk Alerts, you know how this works. Splunk Alerts run on a schedule or in real time, and you select the schedule that it runs on if you're doing it on a schedule. Every hour, every day. You can run it on a cron schedule, so maybe it runs every 5 minutes or every 15 minutes. or it runs at a specific time. And then we set the trigger conditions for it. So I'm going to say if the number of results is greater than 0, this alert is going to trigger. And then we can add trigger actions to it, and we can chain these actions together. So we have the default actions that Splunk adds, such as adding it to a triggered alerts list, sending an email, creating a webhook into something like ServiceNow. But we added some additional actions that we can take. So for example, I could create a plan of actions and milestones based off of this evidence. I can say create a POAM whenever accounts are deleted. I can also set the control status. So I can say for my control on this system, both the audit and assessment status is going to be set to failed if any accounts are deleted. And what will happen is when this alert runs, if it sees any accounts, it will automatically fail the control. That's how we automate our audits and assessments, which helps with your operational security because it shows up on as fast of a schedule as you're willing to run it. You're going to see quickly what's going on. If somebody's deleting accounts and they shouldn't be, it could be a malicious actor, somebody trying to hide their tracks, somebody trying to do something that they shouldn't be. You want to be alerted on it as soon as possible. So that's how we can automate based off of our technical evidence. You can see the visualizations here. With any of these, you can just click on them to open up a search window that's going to show you the raw information behind it. I can see all the raw events behind it. I didn't have to write the search. The search is already written for me. But we track more than just the technical evidence. For example, we track the documents and other artifacts that you might have that support your compliance. We have this assigned evidence panel, and with that, we can actually upload files. Any type of file that we want, we can upload, and it will save it on the search head, and people can download it to view it in terms of compliance with your policies. I can also provide a link to a website. So if you have your policy and procedure documents on a SharePoint site where you're versioning them, you can just link to that SharePoint site and then click through to go to it. In addition to the human activity evidence, or in addition to the documentary evidence and the technical evidence, we have our human activity evidence. So here you can see the control records that we have. A control record is when somebody has come in and taken a look at the control, and they can manually add a control record to say, I monitored this control. And it'll add a time-stamped record to the control records to say that you were here and you monitored this control. You can also see where it says monitor technical indicators for control AC2. That means that somebody took a look at the control through our ConMon dashboard, our continuous monitoring dashboard, and they clicked on it to view the technical evidence for that control. So we have time-stamped records of all this activity that has gone on. This is also where we track plans of actions and milestones. We track those on a per control basis for every system, as well as test procedures and implementation statements. We can do this all the way down to the CCI or sub-control level, so we can track all that information on a per control basis. So that's just one way that we can get down really into that control basis. We provide a number of framework scorecards so that you can really see how your controls are doing in terms of different mandates and different frameworks. So for example, if I had to be in compliance with CMMC, I could use our CMMC scorecard to see how I'm doing versus the different levels of CMMC. This system, for example, has a level 3 of CMMC controls applied to it. So I can see my scores across the level 3 right here. I can see how I'm doing if I want to move up to level 4 or level 5. And I can click on the control to get a graphical representation of how I'm doing. I see I have some failures here. I can click on it to get more information. I can see what my scores are over here. And I can open it up and see exactly which controls are passing and which controls are failing. So here I have 2 controls passing, and I have my AC2 control, which I know is failing. That's just another way that we can dig down into the control level, another way of viewing the different controls that you have applied to your system. If we want to go back up to from assessing the controls at step 4 of the RMF cycle to step 5 of the RMF cycle, we want to look at system authorization. We can view how our system is authorized currently by tracking it on our system authorization dashboard. So here I see the authorization status of my system. I see what my past authorizations are. I can review my assessment information to see if my system should be authorized or not. I can view the POAMs and any documentation that might be relevant to it. And what I can do is I can actually automate based off of these assessment scores. I can automate my assessments so that if my score drops below a certain number, it's automatically rescinded. And if it gets above a certain number, I get another week or another month of authorization. Or I can manually add a new authorization here just by clicking the Add New Authorization button. Moving on to step six of the RMF cycle, we can look at our continuous monitoring dashboard. These are our most important technical controls that we want to monitor on a daily basis. We select which controls that are on here. You're not restricted as to which controls can show up on here. Any control can be here if you want. But here we can see the different controls, and we can click on the control in order to get the data behind it. So I'm looking at AU2, which is audit events. I'm seeing all my technical evidence for the control. This is also going to create a control record to say that I monitored the technical indicators for the control. I can take a look at my failing controls, maybe get an idea of why they're failing. So here I'm looking at authorized assets, authorized software, and the discovered hardware and software. I immediately see I have some discovered software that's not on my authorized list. That might be why it failed. If I want more information, I can look at my system actions page. And this is going to show me items requiring action, such as alerts that have fired off, items that are failing audit or assessment, overdue items, things like that, as well as compliance indicators, my different scores, how many controls I've applied this week, how many controls I've reviewed. If I click on one of these, it's going to show me I haven't gotten any alert recently, but I did have an unauthorized software alert on that CM8 a little while ago. So I can open this up in a search, or I can create a ticket for it. We actually put a ticketing system inside of Qcompliance that you can use to help remediate these alerts. It's not intended to replace any other ticketing system you have, but it's just a way to track the workflow when you're remediating these alerts. I can see the compliance status to see the latest audits and assessments. I'm going to see that that AC2 control, which I failed just recently, just pops up here. I see that CM8 control that failed the other morning at 3 a.m. I see IA2 also failed at 2 a.m., so those were probably automated alerts that went off. I can view the control activities, see who's been monitoring technical indicators. You see that I clicked on these technical indicators and it created a timestamped record that I did it. I'm tracking plans of actions and milestones across the entire system. So I can see all the different ones I have there and go into the specific controls if necessary. I can also see the schedule items. So I can see which controls are up for audit, which ones are up for assessment, which ones are up for monitoring. And I can create alerts based off of this. So I can create an alert that sends out an email or creates a trouble ticket if a control is due for assessment or alert. And then finally, we have an SSP report section. And this section was so popular, we actually added an entire page just for it. We have the ability to generate system security plan reports at the click of a button. So our SSP page shows us our current system SSP data. Do I have my ODP set? Do I have my implementation statement set? What about my control origination? And then it shows me my SSP reports. And I can generate one of those just by clicking on the button. I have a default template. I can also generate based off of FedRAMP moderate or FedRAMP high. So if I want to generate a new SSP report, I just click the button and it's going to generate a Word document for me. So it generates this document. I can download it to my system. I could have viewed any of the historical ones that are there. It saves all the previous ones that you've ever generated. But I can open it up. It's going to show me my system attributes. It's going to show me my hardware inventory, which assets are part of my system. It's going to show me my authorized software, my blacklisted software, and then it's going to show me the details of the control. So for example, AC2, the control we were looking at before, it should be audited every year, assessed every 90 days, and monitored every day. It has a control applicability type of hybrid. As I said, we can do hybrid or inherited controls as well as tailored and overlay controls. We can list what the control provider is, and then we see the audit and assessment findings. So we have the control, we see the audit, we see the assessment finding, when those were updated. We see the details of the control with the organizationally defined parameters put in bold. We even see the implementation statements for the control. So we see all this information in our SSP report. It's all automatically generated for you. It's automatically put together. You don't have to do anything to generate this report other than just click a button. We do provide other reporting as well. In fact, we just revamped our security controls traceability matrix. So now you can see even more information on our system and our SCTM. So you're going to see how the control looks. You see what the implementation and the test statements are, what the assessment and audit scores are. We can do different views, we can do different filters. We can actually change the assessment and audit status from here. So we can click on it. We can look at the assessment status. We can see the implementation statement. We can see all that information here. In terms of reporting, we actually provide an entire page of reports. We have a number of reports here, and then we can also do the Aware dashboard if you need to, a CDM FISMA dashboard. We can create custom reports as well. That's what we do in a lot of our implementations, is to create a custom reporting for what you need for your system. So finally, I'm going to take a little bit of a look at the configuration of Q Compliance. I feel this is important because you really need to know what's on the back end in order to understand how things are working and what you can do. As I mentioned, you can do custom controls. So we can look at a custom control library here, and we're going to see that these controls are just as powerful as the controls that we have out of the box. So if I edit this control, it's going to show me the control name, title, the description, any supplemental guidance. I can add organizationally defined parameters here if I want. All the same things that you have in your controls that you see out of the box. In addition, we can also select visualizations for the control. So we can have that technical evidence for the control, just like we do for the out-of-the-box controls. And those are really simple to configure. We just search for a keyword, and it brings up the different visualizations that rely on that keyword, and I can just check the box to add them to that control. So I can rearrange them, I can drag and drop them to rearrange them, I can add different rows, I can add any visualizations that I want. I can also add the custom visualizations that perhaps I created. So I can do that all with the custom controls. I can also add those custom visualizations to any of the current controls in here. So if I come up with my own account management visualization, for example, I can add that to control AC2. The system management page is really where we define what we're doing with the system. So this gives us different aspects to the system. For example, what baseline are we setting for the system? We can do an NSS with the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, low, moderate, or high. We can do a NIST baseline, low, moderate, or high, or we can have no baseline and just do an overlay of controls that we want in there, or tailor in specific controls to our control configuration page. We also track the different assets that are part of the system here. So that's really important to be able to do because assets really define what your system is. So we give you 3 different tools in order to be able to do it. The first is the GUI. So you can search for asset information that is found in Splunk about your different assets that might be part of your system. And here you just check the box, and then you can click on Add Asset, and it'll add it to your system. If you have a CSV file that's perhaps been put out by your asset management system or something like that, you can upload the CSV file, and you can append or overwrite your current asset information. And then we also have a system tag, which is actually pretty interesting. Basically, it uses a Splunk search to tag certain assets in your Splunk environment and then dynamically add them to your asset inventory. That's particularly useful if you have a highly virtual environment, lots of virtual machines coming and going. You can set up that system tag to identify them by any parameter that you want. And once it identifies the assets, it'll automatically add them to your asset inventory when they show up, and it will automatically remove them when they're gone. So that way you don't have to manually update your asset inventory every time a machine spins up or spins down. As I mentioned before, we do also have basically what we call a health check for our system. This is our control monitoring coverage dashboard. And this tells us whether or not we're getting the data we need for our visualizations. So here we're looking at our different visualizations. This is showing us the controls that have visualizations and whether or not they're getting data. So if I click on a green control, it's telling me that all my visualizations have data. So everything's hunky-dory there, everything's doing well, that's great. But if I click on a yellow or red one, I'm going to see that some of my visualizations are missing data. If I want to look into this a little bit further, I can click on the name of the visualization, And it's going to give me the information I need in order to work with my Splunk admins and get that data in here. So for example, here we're looking at recently created temporary accounts. It's providing me a short description of what this visualization is doing. And then it's telling me the pertinent information. What data models is it looking in? What indexes is it looking in? What fields is it looking for? What tags is it looking for? So I can take this information and I can look at my Splunk instance and I can say, am I looking for the right data in the right place? You know, maybe I'm not looking in the right indexes. Maybe I don't have it tagged correctly. Maybe it's not showing up in my data model. Maybe I just don't have that data to begin with, and I need to talk to the Splunk admin about what information we need to onboard in order to get this data. Or maybe we just don't have recently created temporary accounts. I can use all this information in order to look into it and see why my visualization doesn't have data. That's a quick overview of Q compliance. Really, there's a lot more to it. We could spend hours in here, and that's what we do typically for our training is we spend half a day with our end user training and showing you how things work and how you can do things in there. And then we have our deployment training, which Matt mentioned, for the admins to show them how you can actually set up and configure Q compliance and keep it up and running and upgrade it. And that takes more like 2 days to go through. But I'm going to switch to Q Audit. This is much faster to go through because we're looking at ICS 500-27. And this gives us a list of auditable events. These are the events that we're looking for as defined by ICS 500-27. As Matt mentioned, we broke these down into 8 event families. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our analytics just like we do in Q compliance for the technical evidence, and then create visualizations based off of it so that you can prove that you're auditing what you should be auditing. We typically start off with a data summary page. This is going to tell us that our audit infrastructure is intact and working correctly. So do I see all my hosts? Do I see all my source types? You know, is the data being collected today the data that I expect to be seeing? So I see everything looks pretty fine. Everything has been pretty even over the last week or so. So that's all good. From there, I'll want to walk through my event families. And we're not going to walk through all 8 of them, but we'll take a look at admin access and escalation. So I can do the entire network if I want, or I can just do a system, which here is defined by how we tag the events. So it's not exactly the same as a system in Q compliance. But I'm looking at this system and I'm seeing my privilege executions. That's what admin access and escalation is all about the run as administrator command in Windows or the sudo command in Linux. So I'm seeing top users by privilege execution, top processes. I'm seeing historic trends over the past week. I'm seeing failed privilege executions. The most recent events, we track that on every event family page. We track what the most recent events are. And then for a number of the pages, we also track anomalous events. So this is using Splunk's anomalous event detection in order to look for events that have a very small probability of occurring, and then to identify which field has that small probability. So in this case, we identified 3 different processes which are possibly anomalous, something we might want to look into. And if I want to look into it a little bit further, I just need to click on it and it'll pull behind the event detection. And I can see here what was going on, what happened with this event. If I want to look into it further, I might take this user's account name and I can actually go to user host investigation and I can look into this user a little bit more thoroughly. You're going to notice so far that I haven't written any searches. I haven't typed anything in. I'm looking at my system. I'm going to look specifically for this user. This is the only thing I've had to type in was the name of the user. And I can see what admin logins he's had, what privilege executions, failed privilege executions, application initializations. He's got an off-profile app, successful and failed logins. For any of these, if I want more information, I just click the panel beneath it and click submit. And I'm going to see what this off-profile application is. We actually baseline your applications so you can have both a baseline of applications that are supposed to be running and a watch list of applications that should be really looked out for. So now that I've investigated a little bit, I might want to take a look at the real-time monitoring. This is pulling together all the recent events, and it's going to show me the most recent events for the system that I'm looking at. So I'm going to see here what's going on in terms of authentication and account management, things like that. And then each of these events is going to get a score. So I can go to my risk summary page, and what I can do is I can select which system I want to look at and over what span of time I want to look at it. So I want to look over the last week. I want to see who's the riskiest user and what's the riskiest host on my system. So it's pretty consistent. I'm seeing this user Arnold is the riskiest user every day, and the domain controller is the riskiest host every day. I can see the events, or it broken down by events, what's causing this risk. I can see the top users by score, top hosts by score. And if I click on the user, it's going to bring up what that user's been doing in order to get these points. So I'm seeing that this user got a lot of points for change analysis. If that's part of the user's job, that might not be a big deal. I might even want to configure the scoring parameters to reduce the number of points that he gets. But I can also maybe look into it. I can create a ticket and I can look into it and see a little bit further about what's going on. You know, go up to the user host investigation and investigate this user. You know, why is this user being so risky? But that's Qaudit. As I said, it's much faster to go through. It's just the 8 event families and then the ability to do your user host investigation and your risk scoring about it. So we track everything there and we can do that.
But you can see through the demo, there is just a wide range of capabilities that we can bring to the table. I know Sean mentioned over and over again that he didn't have to write any type of Splunk query to gather that information. And again, it's really meant to help really give you time back in the day from a Splunk admin perspective so that you're not having to do those data calls, dig through the logs to see if a system is compliant. With Qaudit, again, focused around that ICS 500-27 insider threat with those different families, you can really dig into those users that might be malicious to your organization. So one of the questions that we usually get, and I'll wait to see if there are any chat, is how long does it take? What's a life cycle like for getting Q compliance and Qaudit stood up in my environment? So typically, we suggest 4 weeks of professional services for Q compliance. Right, you'll get some standard controls, a lot of your controls out of there. There are some customizations that need to be made. We might want to suggest maybe 5 or 6 weeks, but normally we can get things done relatively easily in 4 weeks, right? And again, that's making sure that your Splunk system is where it needs to be, all the technical add-ons are there, mapping to the controls, etc. For Qaudit, we usually recommend about 2 weeks of professional service. That way we can make sure that your Windows, Linux Audit D logs are getting populated, and you would probably find that you already have a lot of that information already being ingested into Splunk. So that's one of the questions we get quite often as far as being able to get stood up and how quickly we can. So with that, I know we have 1 minute left. Open it up for any last questions. Doesn't look like we will have any. So certainly appreciate everybody spending the hour with us to learn more about Qmulos and how we can really automate a lot of your cybersecurity compliance activities that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Thank you to Rachel at Solutions Simplified and to the Carosoft team for supporting us. If there are any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to us. This recording will go out to everybody so that our contact information is on there. We really look forward to working with you and your agencies or your different organizations on their mission. So with that, everybody have a great rest of your afternoon or morning, and we look forward to speaking soon. Take care.